The red warning lights flashed across the command center of Sanctuary Prime. Commander Zara Keithis stared at the tactical display with tired eyes. The enemy ships surrounded their world like hungry wolves. 300 years of war had brought them to this moment. The Valdorian Republic was dying. "Commander, the outer defense grid is failing," reported Lieutenant Vex from his station. His voice shook with fear. The young officer had never known peace. None of them had. War was all they remembered. Zara nodded slowly. She had expected this news for weeks. The hegemony forces grew stronger every day. Their cybernetic ships moved with perfect precision. Their weapons never missed. Santine 14, 2000 subscribe. Their soldiers felt no fear, no pain, no doubt. They were machines wearing flesh. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Maybe 6 hours before they breach the main shields." 6 hours. Zara thought about all the people on Sanctuary Prime. Millions of families who had fled here when their home worlds burned. Children who played in the underground parks, never seeing real sunlight. Old people who remembered better days before the machines came. The hegemony did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. When they conquered a world, they changed everyone. They put metal in their brains and turned them into more machines. The Republic called it a fate worse than death. Zara walked away from the command center. Her feet carried her down empty hallways to the old archives. The ancient buildings smelled of dust and forgotten dreams. Most of the Republic's history was stored here. Records of better times. Stories of heroes who had saved the day. She needed those stories now. She needed hope. The archive keeper was an old Valdorian named Morix. His scales had turned white with age. His eyes were cloudy, but his memory was sharp. He looked up when Zara entered. "Commander Keithis, you look troubled." "We're all troubled, old friend. The hegemony will break through soon. I'm looking for anything that might help us. Any old alliances. Any forgotten weapons. Anything." Morix moved slowly through the tall shelves. His clawed hands pulled out data crystals and ancient books. "Most of our allies are gone," he said sadly. "The hegemony conquered them or destroyed them. But there are some old stories. Things most people think are fairy tales." He placed a crystal in the reader. Holographic text appeared in the air. Zara read the words with growing interest. "The Terran myth," she read aloud. "What's this?" "Old war stories," Morix explained. "From the early days of space travel. Before the hegemony. Before the Great Wars. There were tales of a species called humans. They came from a world called Terra, or Earth. The stories say they fought in ways no one understood." Zara read more. The accounts seemed impossible. These humans were described as small, weak creatures. They had no natural armor. No claws or fangs. No psychic powers. They couldn't even see in the dark properly. Yet somehow, they won battles against much stronger enemies. "Listen to this," she said, reading from the crystal. "Human soldiers were known to continue fighting even with severe injuries. They showed no fear of death. They used tactics that made no logical sense, yet somehow achieved victory. Their leaders often chose to die rather than surrender, inspiring their troops to impossible acts of courage." Morix nodded. "The scholars say it's all propaganda. Made-up stories to inspire troops. No species could really fight like that. But what if it's true?" Zara asked. Her heart began to beat faster. "What if they're still out there?" The old keeper shook his head. "Even if they existed once, they're probably gone now. The galaxy is a cruel place. Soft species don't survive long." Zara kept reading. The stories told of humans who refused to give up. They turned losing battles into victories through pure stubbornness. They invented new weapons during fights. They rescued their wounded even when it meant certain death. They seemed to get stronger when things got worse. One story caught her attention. It told of a human ship that was surrounded by enemy vessels. The captain could have surrendered and saved his crew. Instead, he rammed his ship into the enemy flagship. Both ships were destroyed, but the enemy fleet retreated in confusion. They had never seen anyone choose death over defeat. Where were they last seen? Zara asked. Morix checked the records. The coordinates are here, but they're old. Very old. The Terra system, if it exists, would be far beyond our current borders. In uncharted space, Zara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. It was a crazy idea. These humans were probably just stories. Even if they were real, they were likely extinct. But what choice did she have? She recorded the coordinates. Morix, I need you to prepare a long-range message probe. The fastest one we have. Commander. Surely, you don't believe. I don't know what I believe, Zara interrupted. But I know we're going to die here, if we don't try something. Send the message to these coordinates. Tell them who we are. Tell them we're the last free people in this part of the galaxy. Tell them the machines are winning. And if there's no one there to receive it? Zara looked at the ancient stories one more time. Tales of creatures who never gave up. Who fought impossible odds and somehow won. Who chose hope when logic said to despair. Then we'll die knowing we tried everything, she said. But maybe, just maybe, legends sometimes turn out to be real. Outside, the enemy ships moved closer. The shields sparked and flickered. Time was running out. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, a message probe began its long journey toward a system that might not even exist, carrying the desperate hope of a dying civilization to creatures that might be nothing more than ancient myths. The war continued. But for the first time in years, someone dared to hope for a miracle. 3 months had passed since Zara sent the message probe. 3 months of watching their world slowly die. The hegemony ships had broken through the outer defenses. Their metal soldiers walked on Sanctuary Prime's surface. The great shields that protected the main cities flickered like dying candles. Zara stood in the command center, watching the tactical display. Red dots showed enemy positions. They were everywhere now. Soon, very soon, the last free world in this sector would fall. "Commander!" Lieutenant Vex called out. His voice was different. Excited. "We're getting strange readings at the edge of the system." "More hegemony ships?" Zara asked without hope. "No, this is something else. Something impossible." On the main screen, space itself began to twist and bend. The stars stretched and warped, like someone was pulling them. Energy readings spiked higher than anything Zara had ever seen. It wasn't like the clean, controlled jump signatures of hegemony vessels. This was wild, chaotic, raw. What could cause that kind of distortion? She wondered aloud. The answer came as ships began to emerge from the twisted space. But these weren't like any vessels in the galactic databases. They were rough and angular. Their hulls were thick metal instead of the smooth energy-based armor everyone used. Strange symbols were painted on their sides. Weapons that looked primitive, but massive, covered their surfaces. "I count 27 ships," Vex reported. His instruments struggled to get clear readings. "But our scanners can't lock onto them properly. It's like they're jamming us, but not with any technology we recognize." More ships kept coming. Some were huge, like floating mountains of metal and fire. Others were smaller, but moved with deadly grace. All of them looked like they had been built for one purpose: war. Then the transmission came. It cut through all their communication channels at once. The voice spoke in an accent Zara had never heard. The words were in Old Galactic, but with strange pronunciation. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. We received your distress call. Sorry we're late. Took us a while to dig out the old star charts." Silence filled the command center. Everyone stared at Zara, The legends were real. The myths had ships and weapons and voices. Zara found her voice first. "Unknown fleet, this is Commander Keithus of the Valdorian Republic. We weren't sure anyone would come." A short laugh came through the speakers. "Well, we're here now. Looks like you've got quite a problem. Don't worry. We've dealt with machine empires before." On the tactical display, the hegemony fleet was moving. Their perfect formations shifted to intercept the new arrivals. Prime Node Zephyus, the cybernetic commander, sent his usual demand for surrender. It was broadcast on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, you have entered hegemony space without permission. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 10 seconds to comply." The human response was immediate and shocking. "Hegemony forces, this is Admiral Chen. We've got a counteroffer. You have 10 seconds to pack up your toys and go home. After that, we start shooting." Zara felt her heart racing. No one talked to the hegemony like that. Their weapons could destroy entire planets. Their ships moved with computer precision. Their soldiers felt no fear. The 10 seconds passed. The hegemony fired first. Hundreds of energy beams lanced out toward the human ships. It should have been over instantly. The strange vessels were outnumbered 3-1. But something impossible happened. The human ships didn't try to dodge in the neat, predictable patterns that tactical computers expected. Instead, they moved like living things. They twisted and rolled and spun in ways that made no sense. Some of them seemed to fly straight into the enemy fire, only to slip away at the last second. Their weapons were different too. Instead of energy beams, they fired solid metal projectiles, bullets and shells and missiles that moved too fast to track. The hegemony's energy shields, designed to stop plasma and lasers, did nothing against simple metal and explosives. "This is impossible," Vex whispered. "Their ships should be destroyed. Those maneuvers would kill any crew we know about." But the human ships kept fighting and winning. One hegemony cruiser tried to retreat. A human destroyer, its hull scarred and burning, chased after it. Instead of trying to disable the enemy ship, the destroyer rammed straight into it. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire and metal. "Did they just sacrifice themselves?" Zara asked. "Yes," came Admiral Chen's voice over the radio. "Rodriguez always was too eager. Good man. We'll remember him." The Admiral spoke like losing a ship and its crew was just part of the job. There was sadness in her voice, but no fear, no panic, just grim determination. More hegemony ships moved to attack. The humans met them with tactics that made no logical sense. Some ships flew in impossible formations that should have resulted in collisions. Others broke off from their groups to fight alone against overwhelming odds. But it worked. The hegemony forces, so used to fighting logical enemies, couldn't adapt fast enough. Their computers tried to predict human movements and failed every time. Their perfect tactics crumbled against opponents who seemed to break every rule of space combat. In 30 minutes, it was over. Half the hegemony fleet was destroyed or disabled. The other half was retreating, probably to report this impossible development to their leaders. Admiral Chen's voice came over the radio again. "Sanctuary Prime. This is Admiral Chen. We're sending down medical supplies and engineers. Our Marine commander wants to talk to whoever's in charge of your ground defenses. Looks like you've got some uninvited guests on your planet." Zara looked at her officers. They stared back with expressions of wonder and disbelief. The legends were real, and they had come to save them. "Admiral Chen," Zara replied. "I'm Commander Kethis. I sent the message that brought you here. I don't know how to thank you." Another laugh came through the speakers. "Thank us after we finish the job, Commander. We've got some cleaning up to do. And then we need to have a long talk about what's been happening in this part of the galaxy. Seems like things got pretty bad while we were away." As the first human transport ships began landing on Sanctuary Prime, Zara realized their war wasn't over. It was just beginning. But for the first time in 3 centuries, they weren't alone. The humans had come. And they fought like no one else in the galaxy. The question was, who were they really? And where had they been hiding all this time? The hegemony response was swift and brutal. Prime Node Zephyus, the cybernetic commander of the Machine Empire, did not accept defeat easily. Within hours of the first battle, a massive hegemony battle group jumped into the system. 200 ships. Enough firepower to crack a planet. But they found the humans waiting. Admiral Chen's fleet had spread out across the system. Her ships moved in patterns that made no sense to hegemony computers. They didn't form neat battle lines or protective formations. Instead, they seemed to drift randomly through space, like debris floating on an invisible current. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, came the calm voice over human communications. Remember, they think like machines. Be illogical. Be unpredictable. Be human. Zara watched from Sanctuary Prime's command center as the battle began. The hegemony ships moved with perfect precision. Their formations were beautiful and deadly. Every vessel knew exactly where it should be. The humans attacked from everywhere at once. Ships that had seemed to be retreating suddenly spun around and fired from point-blank range. Others that appeared damaged and helpless revealed hidden weapons. A human cruiser that looked like it was drifting dead in space suddenly roared to life and rammed through a hegemony formation. Their tactics make no sense, Lieutenant Vex reported. They're breaking every rule of space combat. But they're winning, Zara replied. On the planet's surface, the real revelation began. Hegemony ground forces had established bases in the northern continent. Their cybernetic soldiers were methodically hunting down Republic civilians. The humans decided to stop them. The first human transport landed in a valley 5 kilometers from the enemy base. Zara watched through satellite feeds as the transport doors opened. She expected to see the kind of super soldiers that could match hegemony cyborgs. Advanced warriors with powered armor and energy weapons. Instead, she saw ordinary-looking humans in simple combat gear. They carried projectile weapons that seemed almost primitive. No energy shields. No cybernetic enhancements. Just regular people who looked small and fragile compared to their metal enemies. Their leader was a sergeant named Rodriguez. He was short and stocky, with graying hair and scars on his face. He looked like he had been fighting wars for a very long time. "All right, Marines," he said to his troops. "You know the drill. The machines have hostages in that base. We're going to get them out. Questions?" A young Marine raised her hand. "Sergeant, intelligence says there are 300 enemy soldiers in there. We've only got 30 people." Rodriguez smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then it's almost a fair fight. Move out." What happened next changed everything Zara thought she knew about warfare. The humans didn't charge the enemy base. They didn't use orbital bombardment or siege weapons. Instead, they did something no logical species would attempt. They split up. Rodriguez took 10 Marines and attacked the front gate. The other 20 humans scattered into the wilderness around the base. They moved like ghosts through the forest, using natural cover that most species ignored. The hegemony defenders responded perfectly. Their sensors detected the main attack at the gate. Their computers calculated the best defensive positions. Their soldiers moved with mechanical precision to counter the assault. They never saw the other humans coming. While Rodriguez and his Marines created noise and confusion at the front gate, the rest of the human force infiltrated the base from every direction. They climbed walls, crawled through drainage pipes, and somehow got inside secured buildings without triggering alarms. But the most shocking thing happened when a squad of hegemony soldiers cornered Rodriguez's group. The cyborg soldiers were faster and stronger than the humans. Their weapons were more powerful. Their armor could stop any projectile the Marines carried. It should have been a massacre. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. When their sergeant was hit by enemy fire and went down, the Marines didn't retreat. They didn't take cover and wait for support. They got angry. A Marine named Jackson saw Rodriguez fall. He screamed something in the human language that the translators couldn't process. Then he did something that broke every rule of combat. He charged straight at the enemy soldiers. He should have died instantly. The hegemony weapons should have cut him down before he took 3 steps. But Jackson moved, like a creature possessed. He rolled and dodged and somehow got close enough to attack with bare hands. What followed was brutal and impossible. Jackson grabbed a cyborg soldier and began tearing at its mechanical parts. The machine tried to shake him off, but the human held on. Other Marines joined the attack. They swarmed over their enemies like wild animals. The hegemony soldiers found themselves fighting an enemy they didn't understand. Their computers had no protocols for dealing with warriors who got stronger when their friends were hurt. Their tactical programs couldn't process enemies who chose to fight with fists and knives when they had perfectly good guns. In 15 minutes, the enemy squad was destroyed. The humans had taken terrible casualties, but they kept fighting until every machine was silent. Meanwhile, the infiltration teams had found the hostages, Valdorian civilians who had been marked for conversion. The humans freed them, using methods that made no logical sense. They blew holes in walls instead of using doors. They created distractions by setting random fires. They seemed to take delight in causing chaos. The entire operation took 2 hours. When it was over, 300 hegemony soldiers were dead or disabled. The human casualties were severe. They had lost half their force, but every hostage was free. Rodriguez, wounded but alive, reported back to Admiral Chen. "Mission accomplished, Admiral. Package delivered. The machines won't be bothering these people anymore." Zara listened to the transmission with amazement. The human sergeant spoke like losing 15 Marines was just the cost of doing business. There was grief in his voice, but no regret. No doubt about whether the mission was worth the price. "Good work, Rodriguez," Admiral Chen replied. "Medical teams are on their way. Get your people patched up. We've got more work to do." As Zara watched the human forces regroup, she began to understand something terrifying and wonderful. These creatures didn't fight like any species in the galaxy. They didn't calculate odds or minimize risks. They decided what was right and then did it, regardless of the cost. The hegemony had conquered half the galaxy because they were logical and efficient. They never wasted resources. They never took unnecessary risks. They fought like the perfect machines they were. The humans fought like something else entirely. They fought like creatures who cared more about protecting others than protecting themselves. Like warriors who would rather die than let innocents suffer. Like beings who got stronger in the face of impossible odds. Prime Node Zephyus, watching his forces retreat from yet another human victory, began to understand why these creatures had been considered myths. No rational species would fight this way. No logical civilization could survive such wasteful tactics. But they weren't losing. They were winning. And that changed everything. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant when they said they never gave up. The machines were about to face an enemy that couldn't be calculated, predicted, or understood. The war was just beginning. But now the legends were real, and they were fighting back. 2 weeks after the first battles, Admiral Chen invited Commander Zara Keithis aboard the human flagship. The ship was called the Indomitable, and it looked like it had been built by people who expected to fight impossible battles. The corridors were narrow and functional. Everything was made of thick metal and designed to keep working even when damaged. Human crew members moved with quiet efficiency, but Zara noticed something different about them. They looked at each other with genuine care. When they spoke, there was warmth in their voices that she had never heard among professional soldiers. Admiral Chen met her in the war room. The human commander was smaller than Zara had expected. Gray hair, weathered face, and eyes that had seen too much fighting. But when she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. "Commander Keithis, thank you for joining us. We need to talk about what comes next. Admiral, I have to ask, where have you been? The galaxy has been fighting the hegemony for 3 centuries. We could have used your help years ago." Chen smiled sadly. "We've been watching and preparing. The truth is, humanity learned long ago that sometimes the best way to win a war is to let your enemies think you don't exist." She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Points of light marked human positions. Not just the fleet that had arrived, but hidden bases, secret colonies, and observation posts scattered across dozens of star systems. "We've been studying the hegemony for centuries," Chen explained. "Every battle they fought, every tactic they used, every weakness they revealed. We knew that someday we'd have to face them. We just waited for the right moment." "Why now?" Zara asked. "Because you called for help, and because the hegemony made a mistake. They think they've seen every possible strategy." Chen's expression hardened. "They have no idea what humans are capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized." Over the following days, Zara learned the truth about human warfare. What she had seen in the first battles was just the beginning. Humans didn't fight like other species because they weren't like other species. Colonel Martinez, the human ground forces commander, showed her recordings from training exercises on distant human worlds. Soldiers practicing in environments that would kill most beings. Warriors who trained by fighting each other with bare hands until someone was unconscious. Pilots who learned to fly by deliberately crashing and surviving. "We don't train our soldiers to avoid death," Martinez explained. "We train them to accept it. Once you're not afraid to die, you can accomplish things that terrify your enemies." The humans revealed their true capabilities gradually. Ships that had seemed primitive were actually more advanced than anything in the galaxy, just built to different principles. Instead of relying on energy shields that could fail, they used thick armor that could absorb incredible damage. Instead of precise, efficient weapons, they carried massive guns that could punch through any defense. But the most terrifying revelation was their strategy. "We've been preparing for this war for 300 years, Admiral Chen told the combined human and Republic leadership. "Every human child learns military history. Every colony has weapons factories. Every civilian is trained in basic combat. We turned our entire civilization into a military force." She showed them the deployment plans. Human fleets were already moving toward key hegemony systems. Not to conquer them, but to cause maximum chaos. They would attack supply lines, destroy communication networks, and generally make the machine empire's perfect organization fall apart. "The hegemony's strength is coordination," explained Captain Sarah Kim, the human intelligence officer. "They rely on every part of their empire, working together perfectly. But they've never faced an enemy that specializes in making things unpredictable." Zara watched as human forces launched attacks across the sector. But these weren't the neat, organized campaigns that Republic forces used. Human tactics were deliberately chaotic. A human raiding force would attack a hegemony supply depot, not to capture it, but to force the enemy to send reinforcements from somewhere else. While the machines were responding to that threat, another human group would attack a completely different target in a completely different system. The hegemony computers tried to find patterns in the human attacks. They analyzed every raid, every battle, every human transmission they could intercept. But there was no pattern. The humans seemed to be making decisions at random, except they weren't random at all. "Every human commander has complete authority to change the plan," Admiral Chen explained. "If they see an opportunity, they take it. If they spot a weakness, they attack it. We don't waste time asking for permission or updating battle computers. We just fight." This flexibility drove the hegemony forces to distraction. They would prepare defenses for an expected attack, only to discover that the humans had already moved on to assault something else entirely. By the time the machines adapted to one tactic, the humans were using 10 different ones. But the real revelation came when Prime Node Zephyus himself entered the battlefield. The cybernetic commander brought his personal fleet, 500 of the most advanced ships in the hegemony. His soldiers were the elite of the machine empire, upgraded with the latest technology and programming. He intended to crush the human rebellion once and for all. Admiral Chen met him in the Kepler Nebula, with exactly 50 human ships. The battle should have been over in minutes. The hegemony forces had every advantage. More ships, better weapons, superior technology. Their computers calculated a 98% chance of victory. What they got instead was a lesson in human psychology. The humans didn't try to win a conventional battle. Instead, they turned the fight into something else entirely. They used the nebula's radiation to hide their movements. They fired weapons that released clouds of debris, making sensors useless. They rammed damaged ships into enemy formations, using their own vessels as weapons. But most importantly, they made the battle personal. Human ships targeted Zephyus directly, ignoring easier targets to focus on the enemy commander. They used suicide attacks, ramming runs, and boarding actions that made no tactical sense but created maximum psychological impact. Your computers can calculate odds. Admiral Chen broadcast to the hegemony fleet. But they can't calculate human stubbornness. We're going to keep coming until you're all scrap metal. For the first time in his existence, Prime Node Zephyus felt something he didn't understand. His logical mind told him he should win this battle. His computers showed favorable odds. His ships were performing within acceptable parameters. But the humans kept fighting anyway. They kept attacking when they should retreat. They kept shooting when they should surrender. They kept coming when they should be dead. When the battle was over, both fleets were badly damaged. But the humans were still fighting, while the hegemony forces were retreating in confusion. Zara watched the reports from her command center on Sanctuary Prime. The humans hadn't just won battles. They had done something much more important. They had shown the galaxy that the hegemony could be defeated. All across Republic space, resistance movements sprang to life. Worlds that had given up hope began to fight back. The machine's perfect empire started to crack under the pressure of an enemy that refused to be logical. This is just the beginning, Admiral Chen told her during their final meeting on the Indomitable. The hegemony built their empire by convincing everyone that resistance was futile. We're going to show them they were wrong. The human fleet was preparing to leave, not to retreat, but to carry the fight deeper into enemy territory. They would attack the hegemony's core systems, spreading chaos and hope in equal measure. As Zara watched the human ships jump away, she realized that the galaxy had changed forever. The legends were real. The myths had teeth, and they were going to war. 6 months later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, staring at the most heavily fortified system in the galaxy. The Hegemony Core, home to the Machine Empire's central command and the seat of their power. Thousands of automated defense stations. Orbital weapon platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Ships beyond counting, all controlled by the supreme artificial intelligence that ruled the hegemony. No one had ever successfully attacked this system. No one had even tried. In over 200 years. Chen smiled. All ships. This is Admiral Chen. Today we finish what the galaxy started 3 centuries ago. Today we break the machine. Around her, the combined human and Republic fleet prepared for battle. Humans had kept their promise to spread chaos throughout hegemony space. Now, dozens of liberated worlds had sent ships to join the final assault. The fleet was massive, but still outnumbered 10 to 1 by the defenses ahead. Admiral, reported Captain Kim from the intelligence station. "We're receiving the standard hegemony surrender demand." The cold, mechanical voice of the Corps' central intelligence filled the communication channels. "Attacking forces. You have entered the most secure system in the galaxy. Your biological limitations make victory impossible. Surrender now, and face conversion, rather than destruction." Chen keyed her microphone. "Hegemony Corps. This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. We've got a counteroffer. Shut down your empire and we'll let your central computer live in a nice quiet prison somewhere. You have 60 seconds to comply." "John." The response was immediate. Every weapon in the system opened fire. The battle that followed would be remembered for 1,000 years. The humans had learned everything they could about hegemony tactics and technology. But more importantly, they had learned how to be completely unpredictable. Human dreadnoughts, their hulls covered in reactive armor, charged straight through the defensive grid. They took damage that should have destroyed them, but kept fighting. Some ships were held together by nothing more than emergency force fields and the stubborn refusal of their crews to die. The Indomitable led the charge toward the core itself. Chen had a personal appointment with Prime Node Zephyus, and she intended to keep it. "All fighters, this is Colonel Martinez," came the voice of the Marine commander. "Remember, Archimenound, we're not trying to capture this station. We're trying to break it. Make some noise." Human assault craft swarmed over the Corps' superstructure like angry insects. They attached explosive charges to critical systems, not because the explosions would destroy the station, but because the chaos would disrupt its perfect operations. On the station's command deck, Prime Node Zephyus watched his perfect defenses crumble under the assault of creatures that refused to follow logical tactics. His computers couldn't predict their movements. His weapons couldn't track their erratic flight patterns. His soldiers couldn't match their desperate courage. The moment came when Admiral Chen's boarding pod crashed through the armored hull of the command section. Emergency alarms screamed as the human admiral and a squad of Marines fought their way through the corridors. Zephyus met them in the central command chamber. The cybernetic being was 7 feet tall, his body a fusion of organic tissue and advanced machinery. His weapons were built into his arms. His mind was linked to every ship in the system. "Admiral Chen," he said in his cold mechanical voice, "you have come here to die." Chen looked up at the towering figure. She was injured from the boarding action, her uniform torn and bloody, but her eyes held no fear. "I came here to finish a conversation we started 6 months ago. You said humans were too illogical to win wars. I came to prove you wrong." The fight that followed was brutal and decisive. Zephyus was faster and stronger than any human. His cybernetic reflexes were perfect. His weapons never missed. By every measure, he should have won easily. But Chen had something no computer could calculate. She had the backing of every human who had ever refused to surrender. Every Marine who had died protecting strangers. Every pilot who had chosen to ram enemy ships rather than retreat. She carried the weight of her entire species' stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The battle lasted only minutes. But in those minutes, Chen showed the galaxy what humans meant when they said they never gave up. She took injuries that should have killed her. She kept fighting when logic said she should fall. She used her environment as a weapon, turning the command chamber itself against her enemy. When it was over, Prime Node Zephyus lay broken on the floor of his own command center. His perfect mind, connected to the entire hegemony fleet, began shutting down. "Impossible," he whispered with his dying voice. "You cannot defeat superior technology with inferior biology." Chen knelt beside him, breathing heavily. "We didn't defeat your technology. We defeated your thinking. You forgot that wars aren't won by computers. They're won by people who care more about winning than surviving." As Zephyus died, the hegemony fleet began to fall apart. Without their central coordination, The machine ships became confused and ineffective. Some simply stopped fighting. Others turned on each other as conflicting programs took over. The battle was won. But the real victory came in the days that followed. Across the galaxy, hegemony worlds that had been held in mechanical tyranny began to rebel. The empire that had seemed invincible cracked apart as its member species remembered what freedom felt like. A month later, Commander Zara Kethis stood in the rebuilt command center of Sanctuary Prime. Through the windows, she could see the stars, without the red glow of enemy ships. For the first time in 3 centuries, the galaxy was at peace. Admiral Chen had come to say goodbye. The human fleets were preparing to leave, heading for the rim of known space to explore new regions. "Where will you go now?" Zara asked. "Out there," Chen replied, pointing toward the unknown regions beyond the galaxy's edge. Humans have a talent for finding new challenges. There's always something bigger and more dangerous waiting in the dark. We might as well go look for it before it comes looking for us. What should we tell our children about the humans who saved the galaxy? Chen smiled. It was the first truly happy expression Zara had seen from her. Tell them we were never legends. Tell them we were just people who learned that sometimes the most important battles are the ones you're supposed to lose. Tell them that giving up is the only real defeat. As the human ships jumped away toward unknown space, Zara thought about the future. The galaxy was free, but it was also changed. The Republic would rebuild, but it would remember the lessons the humans had taught them. That courage could overcome superior technology. That hope could survive any darkness. That sometimes, the most important thing was not winning, but refusing to quit. In the years that followed, as peace returned to the galaxy, children would grow up hearing stories of the humans who appeared when all seemed lost. They would learn about the species that fought impossible battles and somehow won. They would hear about the creatures who chose hope over logic, courage over safety, and freedom over survival. And somewhere out in the darkness between galaxies, human ships continued their eternal mission, searching for the next impossible challenge, ready to fight the next unwinnable war, carrying with them the knowledge that as long as someone refused to give up, no battle was ever truly lost. The legends were real, and they were still out there, somewhere in the vast darkness, ready to answer the next call for help from those who dared to hope for miracles. The galaxy was safe, for now, but humans knew that peace was just the time between battles, and they would be ready when the next war came. They always were.